reminiscent of the threat his nightly entertainments posed to— Good God! He blanched, caught in a squeeze between a long-ignored conscience and mortal dread. He had made a promise. Curse Ashton Graham's hide. When heading for New York with his pregnant wife, Daisy, he had wrangled a promise from Reynard to look after her family in his absence. Her sisters were babes in the woods, he said, too pretty for their own good, he said. London was full of snakes, rakes, and scandal-mongers, he said, and if anyone could look after them and see that nothing wicked assailed them, it was the fox himself, who was on a first-name basis with Wicked, and had the resources and cunning to intercept and deflect any harm that threatened Daisy's family. He closed his eyes for a moment, fighting back the memory of Ashton's genuine worry, and the liquor they'd consumed the night before Ash and Daisy left for America. He'd been near comatose by the time his old school friend pried that unthinkable vow from him. What would it hurt? He had told himself when he sobered up. They were so fresh and innocent, and their mother and uncle were so doting and protective. What could go wrong? He glanced down at the gaming floor and frowned at the way Red stumbled, and then laughed uproariously at his own misstep, drawing his fellow gamblers into the hilarity. That was what could go wrong. A frisson of shame went through him at the way he'd abandoned his word on such a self-centered premise. Since that night he'd done his best to avoid the Bumgarten women and their hard-drinking uncle. Below, Red managed to capture a passing glass of whiskey and down it. "Oh, howdy, boys. That there's some fine Irish whiskey." It seemed like the entire patronage joined his raucous laughter. Reynard grimaced and then nodded to Beulah McNeil. "Fine," he said roughly. "I'll pry him loose from your table and carry him home." And he descended the steps to save silver magnate Redmond Straight from his own worst impulses. Frankie Bumgarten, lay awake in her feather-plumped bed, staring up at the delicate canopy overhead. Light from the wheezing coals in the hearth moved sinuously across the silk-lined brocade, and the stylish townhouse was so quiet she could hear the chimes of the clock in the distant entry hall. Minutes that seemed like hours dragged by. For the third time that week she had awakened in the middle of the night and found it impossible to go back to sleep. The reason was all too clear. Elizabeth Straight Bumgarten, Frankie's mother, had given her an ultimatum: cooperate and make herself amenable to noble suitors, or find herself packed off back to America. Elizabeth was determined to see her daughters married and settled in matches that provided both status and comfort. As heiresses to a fortune derived from Nevada's silver mines, they deserved nothing less. Their older sister Daisy had married the penniless second son of a duke, a love match of all things, making Elizabeth all the more determined to see her 3 remaining daughters married according to her expectations. The fact that none of them were interested in marrying the boring, self-absorbed, duty-ridden sons of noble houses seemed to escape her. Frankie turned over and pounded her pillows into a more comfortable shape, wishing that her mother would prove half as malleable. Minutes later, overheated, she threw the covers off. The featherbed was too soft, the mattress below it too hard. She would have to find a way to endure and escape unattached through dinners, parties, and balls until the end of the season. She wasn't about to be railroaded into some half-baked arrangement with one of the matrimonial rejects that haunted tea-rooms and debutante balls. Truth be told, she couldn't see any advantage in marriage, for herself or any other woman. It was a lot of fuss and bother with vows to cleave to, honor, and obey. The man would get her marriage settlement, a housekeeper, bed warmer, ultimately an heir and a baby tender, while she would get a belly full of duty, then of baby, then of even more duty.